Marshal Jim Dillon, the head of police, is portrayed in the film as having pledged to protect the peace in Horse Cave, a small, tranquil town with less than 1,000 inhabitants. Marshal Jim is helped in carrying out his responsibilities by Matt Reynolds, a trustworthy deputy. One day, two biker gang members arrived in town. Deputy Matt observed them as they passed by the police station. Matt inquired as to why the biker gang had entered the town, given that it was unusual for them to see a motorcycle gang there, especially so early in the morning. But Jim told him not to worry, claiming that the biker gang may have gotten lost and wound up in their town by accident. It appears that Matt wasn't the only one who was astonished to see the gang come. When they walked inside the cafe, everyone stared at them suspiciously, wondering what they were up to. Shovelhead, a gang member, caused a commotion quickly after he and his pals entered the cafe. He requested Kathy, the proprietor, to pour him some liquor. When Kathy refused because her restaurant didn't offer alcohol in the morning, he persisted, pressuring her to give him a beer. She ended up beating him with a bottle. Her reaction enraged Shovelhead, who challenged Kathy to a fight. Meanwhile, his friend Jarhead stood back and watched them fight. Fortunately, Marshal Jim arrived at the cafe and promptly broke up the fight by beating Shovelhead and sending him to the police station. However, he just detained Shovelhead and released Jarhead. When Jim arrived at the police station, he got apprehensive that the motorcycle gang was preparing something sinister in town. He instructed Deputy Matt to transport Shovelhead to a larger police station in the city while he remained to defend the community. Jim's suspicions proved to be correct. After Matt had driven far enough away from the city, the rest of the motorcycle gang arrived. Shovelhead was actually a ruse to weaken the town's defenses. With minimal protection, the gang members might demolish the city's electric substation, causing a blackout. Jim was in Kathy's cafe, flirting with her. Jim didn't know anything was amiss until the electricity went off. He returned to the police station to see what had transpired. Meanwhile, Matt was on his way to the adjacent town when he noticed someone lying on the side of the road. Matt got out of his car without suspicion and approached the man, believing he was injured. However, it turned out to be a trap, and the man was actually a member of a motorcycle gang. When Matt was within reach, the man rose up and aimed his rifle at him, holding him hostage. Apparently, the group had set more than one trap. On the other side of the road, a police officer on patrol observed a van exceeding the speed limit. When the cop approached the van and asked the driver to get out, some of the gang members sneaked up behind him and shot him dead. One of them, Dirty Bob, then stole the dead cop's automobile while wearing his uniform. Meanwhile, Jim returned to his office and attempted to contact another police station, but the gang had disrupted the phone signal, making it difficult to reach police stations in other cities for assistance. Horse Cave had become secluded from the rest of the world. At this point, Jim heard motorcycles approaching the police station. He dashed out to investigate and saw that the gang had entered the town. Jim reflected on their purpose after seeing them arrive. He was so deep in thought that he didn't notice Jarhead behind him, pointing a gun at him. It was eventually revealed that the group intended to rob the bank in that town. Diablo, the gang's leader, was a native of the area and was well versed in its customs. He even knew Jim well and understood what the chief of police could and couldn't do, making the crime easier to plan. To make the plot go well, he even hired one of his followers as a teller at the bank. After the gang had brought out all of the bank employees, Diablo instructed the manager to assist his men in opening the safe. She led them to the front of the safe, opened it, and let them take all of the money. After successfully robbing the bank, Diablo dispatched some of his men to transport the bank employees and locals to a church, where they would be held. Only Jim was not asked to attend that church. Diablo instructed him and the freshly arrived Deputy Matt to stay with him since Diablo supposedly had something important to tell Jim and Matt. Diablo and his gang did not simply want to rob the bank. He knew that today a casino would put millions of dollars into that bank, and he too wanted the money. So he and his crew would await the armored truck with the money. Because Diablo had blocked contact between the city and the outside world, the two guards escorting the truck would have had no idea that the bank they were heading to was being robbed. While they waited for the truck, someone shot at them with a weapon. It turned out to be one of the townspeople, an elderly man who was an excellent shooter. From his hiding place, he slaughtered the gang members one by one, forcing the rest to retreat. At the same moment, Jim and Matt exploited the pandemonium to flee the area. Unfortunately, they were unaware that a woman was also there at the scene. The horrified woman attempted to flee but was apprehended by Diablo, who then held her prisoner. He threatened to shoot her if the old man did not show up. Seeing who the hostage was, the old man followed Diablo's directions. He couldn't let Diablo kill that woman because she was his wife, so he confronted Diablo and begged him to free her. Diablo retaliated by fatally shooting the elderly man. That woman was quite helpful to Diablo. Then he used her to intimidate Jim and Matt, who were hiding. He promised he would kill her if Jim and Matt did not surrender to him. Panicked, Deputy Matt attempted to buy time by setting an alarm at the business where they were hiding. His acts infuriated Diablo, who decided to kill the woman. Realizing they couldn't face the bad guys in person, Jim set up a trap inside the business. Then he and Matt exited the back door as some gang members approached the building. Jim had created a device that would detonate when the store door opened. After that, Jim and Matt decided to split up so they could better observe their attackers' moves. Diablo and his crew let the two cops go for a time since they needed to wait for the armored truck. They stayed inside the bank, intending to ambush the truck guards as soon as they came. When the truck arrived, the driver got suspicious of the city's peaceful mood, so he requested that his colleague look inside the bank while he waited in the vehicle. Diablo and his men were waiting inside, unbeknownst to him. They instantly grabbed the guard and led him back to the truck, instructing the driver to open the back door. When the driver refused, Diablo shot the guard. They then blew out the truck's back door with explosives. After obtaining the money from the truck, Diablo and his colleagues dashed to the church, where they took the citizens and bank personnel hostage. Diablo led Kathy outside the church, planning to use her to entice Jim and Matt. Matt was close to the church at the time, holding his long-barrel gun. He needed to aim for Diablo and his troops, then squeeze the trigger to kill them. However, Jim prevented him from doing so. Matt wasn't very adept at shooting from a distance, and Jim knew it. He was concerned the bullet would strike Kathy, who was near Diablo. So Matt was supposed to sit and observe Jim in action. But Matt refused to stay there and watch, so he offered himself over to Diablo, hoping that it would persuade Diablo to release Kathy. Jim, however, opted to shoot. He witnessed Matt turn himself in, but continued to shoot at one of the gang members. As a result, Diablo became upset. He directed some of his men to bring Kathy and Matt back into the church, while he and the rest of his men sought out Jim. They were unaware that Jim had set traps throughout town, including one in a car that exploded as soon as a gang member opened the door. Meanwhile, inside the cathedral, Kathy informed Matt that one of the chambers contained a radio. Using the radio, she stated that they would be able to summon troops from police stations in nearby towns. Matt agreed to give it a shot, so when Diablo's men let down their guard, he quickly slipped into the room in question. Fortunately, the radio functioned, and Matt requested reinforcements. Kathy was still sitting at the front of the church while Matt called for help. She noticed that one of Diablo's men was caught off guard, so she took advantage of the situation to attack him and steal his rifle. The attempt proved successful. After killing Diablo's guy, she instructed all of the inmates to move to a safe location on the other side of town. Jim got involved in a gunfight with Diablo and one of his soldiers. Jim eventually managed to kill the henchman, but not Diablo. He managed to flee to his automobile, where he caught up with the rest of his crew. The henchman informed Diablo that the police from the nearby town would arrive shortly, and that they needed to flee promptly with the stolen money. As a result, Diablo decided to stop hunting Jim. What was crucial to him now was to flee before the cops arrived. But just as he was about to go, Jim appeared and shot Diablo's boys dead. Unfortunately, just as Jim was ready to shoot Diablo, his shots ran out, allowing Diablo to run with the money. When Diablo was about to flee, Kathy arrived with a horse and a rifle. She handed Jim the horse and the gun so he could catch Diablo. With no time to waste, Jim pursued Diablo, who was on a stolen motorcycle. The pursuit continued a few moments when Jim shot Diablo's motorcycle, causing it to slide on the paved road. Diablo was helpless in this moment. His wounded leg rendered him unable to run, but Jim chose not to spare him. Diablo had slain numerous people, and his sole punishment was death. Thus, Jim fatally shot Diablo. At the end of the film, it appeared like peace had returned to Horse Cave. Jim returned to work as a cop, but he now has a girlfriend named Kathy, and the film concludes.